Welcome back to the 11th episode of Bullpen Talk. I'm here with my co-host Noah Spiegel, and then a huge guest, Sam Salz, a former wide receiver at A&M and a motivational speaker. So, welcome to the pod, Sam, and let's just get right into it. So, tell the viewers a little bit about your story and what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey guys, my name is Sam Salz. I am the only Orthodox Jewish played in a Division I football game. Walked on at Texas A&M with no experience playing any sort of organized football, and this is my story. So, I was a kid in Jewish schools my entire life. The first non-Jewish institution I was in was actually Texas A&M. And Jewish schools, they don't have football teams. They don't have that level of commitment to sports. Like there is, and there are some, but it's mostly with basketball, and it wasn't my school. But there was something that inside me that like always felt like I had to play football, and I had developed this love for the game and not just the game, but the spirit around the game. That was like the spirit around football is probably one of my favorite things ever. I mean, it's just like it's that great American spirit when people come together. When I was a kid, like my stepdad's family would get together on Sundays and barbecue outside and watch football. And even though like my mom and the rest of my family immigrated from the Soviet Union, that, for some reason that really stuck with me and left a really positive imprint. And then the Eagles won the Super Bowl in my freshman year of high school. And there were these thoughts that were coming around. I think the first one I had was really when I was like in around sixth grade, somewhere between fourth and eighth grade. And I knew I had to play college football, and I didn't know why. But I said, you know what? Let's see what happens. And so the thought waved, the thought wanered, it went away. And then suddenly I found myself at Texas A&M, which I love, the traditions, the former student network, the people, the place, the culture, the sports, I just fell in the Jewish life. I just completely fell in love with Texas A&M, and I went to my first ever like real football game. I'd been to one before. It was, my mom's high school that got blown out. Actually, and I'm pretty sure one of my future teammates was on the team that blew out my mom's high school. Shout out to Tyreek. But that was the only one I'd been to up until then, and I went to my first real American football game in a college football stadium in Texas A&M. I was playing Kent State in the beginning of the 2021 season. And man, it was just something. For the first time when I looked at the game and I didn't see the camera angles and I didn't see everything trying to make it more entertaining, obviously aside from the general stadium atmosphere, I just I just had this feeling and I was like, you know what? What's separating you from them? Experience. And that's not much. You can gain that. I said, let's go. Let's just train. Let's start doing it. And the thought came back and I started, I was training in the gym already. And those two thoughts coincided because I've been training in the gym. Thank God, I put on muscle easily. And I used to look in the mirror and I said, you put on all this muscle and you're really blessed. But why? Like it already looks good. So it's already good. It's already functional. You already lift the Torah, at synagogue when the rabbi asks you, like, why do I have these abilities? And sometimes that's something that just everybody has to ask themselves is like, why do I have abilities? Why do I have talents? Why did God give me these gifts? And there's really only one answer to that. The why is it's your purpose. You have to use it for good. You have to use it to serve God. You have to use it to accomplish what you're supposed to accomplish in life. And I said, you know what? Like, I've obviously been blessed in this department. Let's figure it out. Let's see, and let's just start training. Let's just do. Don't wait for perfection. Don't wait for the time to be right. Start training and then look for the right time. But keep on striking because, my philosophy is if you keep on striking, eventually you'll hit the right time. It may take you 10 hits, right? But the 10th hit might be the one that changes everything for you. And so I just started training. And then I said, but I don't know anything about football. What am I going to do? So I said, let me go see if I can go to a tryout. And I called people and nobody let me in. Nobody said I could come. And then I said, that's fine. Let me go to the head coach. How am I going to get to the head coach? He has a radio show. It's a radio show that you can go to and it's filmed live. And you know what? Let me introduce myself because I didn't know the phrasing for this. I only found it out later when I started listening to some Tony Robbins speeches. But inherently, I knew that connections were the way to get you anywhere. Why? Because that's what it means to be a child of God. God's the greatest connection that you have. And to understand that God can give you anything just for that, for having that relationship. God can make you into anything, into who you're supposed to be, into someone that you never even thought you could be. You know what I mean? Like growing up, I didn't think I was going to be known for being a football player, maybe a YouTuber, right? Maybe something else, but
Yeah.
not maybe an actor. But I never thought it was going to be a football player. And so God really creates you and molds you into something that you never even thought that you could be. And I instinctively understood that you have to connect. And I went to the head coach at his radio show and I had him sign my yarmulke. You got to set yourself apart. And then I told him what I wanted to do. I said, my name is Sam Salz. I'm going to walk onto the team. And I said it with the honesty. And there's the thing about me. I don't tell lies. I don't tell lies. I just tell truths that haven't happened yet. And so I told him, my name is Sam Salz. I'm going to walk onto the team. And I looked him directly in the eyes. And then I forgot to ask if I could come watch a tryout. And as I was leaving, this random guy was like drunk and asked me if I could buy him dinner. And I felt bad enough. So I felt really good. I felt really good because I had just met Jimbo Fisher. And, for me, when I first met him, he was like kind of like larger than life. Even though I knew nothing about football, it was just Jimbo, And I went in, I bought that guy dinner. And as I was there, I saw that everybody had left the radio show, but Jimbo was still there with his staff. And I went back up to him and, I talked to him, introduced myself a little bit more and asked if I could come watch a tryout. And they said yes. And that could continue and kicked everything off. And then I emailed them, I followed up, I had an in with them. And then all of a sudden, when they told me to email me back in January, when, the semester was starting up and they were going to have tryouts, apparently the guy who gave me his card had gone to Oregon. And so was I back at square one? No, because I already had permission from the head coach. Now the question was, is the guy leaving going to hold me back? And to that, you can't ever answer yes. So they made the mistake of posting the location of the tryout and the time of the tryout online. So I still showed up to the tryout regardless. And when they were checking everybody in, I said, my name is Sam Salz. I'm not here to try out. I'm here to watch. And when they tried telling me no, I told them the head coach said I could be here. And I took the yarmulke out of my bag with the head coach's signature and I put it on the table and they let me through. And I stood there with my notebook taking notes of everything they did, from every workout to just every warm up. And as I was leaving the tryout, after I had shook hands and tried to make myself known to the staff that would potentially be evaluating me in the future, I saw something even better. I saw this huge empty field, which is now a parking lot outside of Texas A&M's facility. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start training here. I'm pretty sure I'm in a bunch of sorority girl photos because that's where everybody takes their graduation photos when they pop the champagne.
That's
But that's where they
awesome.
used to, at least. So I'm sure I'm in the background somewhere over there, and I'm sure people remember that. And I would go out there and I started training. And I went out during the morning. And I went out in the evening because I wanted to figure out exactly when Texas A&M would train. Because my philosophy, at the time, and really, my philosophy is that you have to believe you're there before you are. Right? I heard a wonderful speaker recently. I was listening to a podcast and it really reminded me of that philosophy. Is that it's reality, but time hasn't caught up yet. Like what I'm meant to do, what I want to do, it already exists. But me in my present era of time, I just haven't caught up to it. And so I started training outside the facility. And I kept on training, and I figured out exactly what time they would train. So I would sync up my time with their time, and I would stay after, which eventually came to be what I would do as an actual member of the team. I would go out to practice, and then I would stay after for 45 minutes to work on my own and learn the sport that I had know nothing about. And so I started training, and people started noticing me, and coaches started noticing me. And then I would go to the gym, and right, so I was racking up about 1.5 to 2 hours in the field, 2.5 to 3 hours in the gym. And then when I would get home at 12 o'clock at night, there wasn't a lot of kosher meat. And so I would eat beans and rice every night. And I would eat a lot of beans and rice. And for breakfast, I had oats, peanut butter and bananas every day. For lunch, I had a tuna sandwich. I got those sun-kissed tuna slices and like the Dave's Killer Bread. I was really eating on a budget at the time. I didn't really, have too much to spend on food. And I would make at night this huge plate of beans and rice. And I would eat this beans and rice, and the plate was so big, it would take me 2 hours to eat every night. And as I would
That's
eat those,
crazy, man.
yeah,
That's gritty stuff right there, man.
yeah. And so, it would take me 2 hours to eat every night. And then what I would do, I would go online and I would watch videos about football, break it like football for dummies to break down the sport for me so I knew what it was about. And then there was a time that was my schedule for a couple months, couple 3, 4, 5 months, at that first year of school for me. And mind you, I wasn't even a student at Texas A&M at the time. I was an online student at West Texas A&M because I didn't have the grades to get into Texas A&M in the beginning or whatever. I applied late. I mean, I had like a 3.2 GPA in high school. I guess that just wasn't good for them, especially
Yep.
for an out-of-state student. So I had 3.2 GPA in high school, and I had to get into Texas A&M. So I was like doing online school, living at the rabbi's like annexed house, right? That all where his kids did online school because there was no Jewish school in College Station,
That's
right?
awesome,
And I freaking lived I lived there, and I would eat the beans and rice, and I would do all this training, and I would just continuously do this. And every time people would ask me like, Sam, what are you doing around 5? I'd be like, well, I have football practice. And and the best part is just people think you're nuts, but it's amazing when they think you're nuts, and then all of a sudden, like it happens, and then it turns out you're still
Yeah.
crazy because you
Look at you
believe, but
now, though. Look at
you're
you
crazy
now.
with results.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so Sam, I want to kind of not to cut you off, but go back to that story of it's highlighted everywhere that you were the kid like you were talking about practicing on that field. So like when was it the time when one of the coaches came up to you and said, "Hey man, we'll give you a tryout or you're able to walk on the team," and like obviously like you were saying, the beans and rice, the extra time, showing up to these different types of meetings, things that you really need to do to get to the next level,
Right,
especially if you've never played the sport before. So like what
right.
was that moment like when you eventually got the call or like the message that, "Hey, Sam, we want you to come try out for us." Like what was that feeling like? Like obviously the
So yeah,
achievement and
yeah,
all
yeah.
that and the power of
So I
emotion.
gotta I gotta preface the answer to that like this. So I'm sitting in the car with my dad during my first winter break, and he supports me and what I'm doing. But he's like, son, I'm sorry, wrong. This is the wrong time. I was seeing my dad in the summer in the car, and he goes, you know, when are they going to try the tryout? I don't know. Because sometimes they have the winter tryouts, the fall tryouts. They don't always have them, but they always have a winter tryout. And so I had been, in the summer at Texas A&M. There were nights I spent like literally up until like 1 in the morning on the field, and I would just train there. And I remember I kept on asking coaches, when are you guys gonna have tryouts? Whoever I could find outside the facility, they're like, oh, we have a tryout in the fall. I didn't believe, whatever. I didn't believe that. I still don't, even to this day, when coaches say that their roster's full, I don't like, I've heard it all before. The truth is, they were telling the truth. The roster was full, but then someone got medically retired. And my dad was like, son, when's the tryout? You've been working so hard, whatever. I said, Pop, listen, I don't know. But I said, I have faith that I will be on the team. And if there's no tryout, I'll be on the team in the middle of the season with no tryout. And that will really make you look at someone like they're nuts. And so the fall comes around. Yes, there's no tryout. But I go back to the head coach's radio show. I'm there, I meet some of the people who are watching it, and I went up to him. I said, "What happened? There was no tryout." He sent me over to the associate athletic director and his assistant, and we exchanged numbers. And tells me, you know, we're full right now. Just had to cut 5 guys, but if anybody quits, we'll let you know. And that was good enough for me because sometimes you really do need that little like speck of faith,
Mhm.
something to hold on to. And 3, 4 weeks in, I keep on going back to the radio show every week. And I tell the people at the radio show I'm not gonna, the friends I had made at the radio show, I said I'm not gonna be there the next week because I'm gonna be fasting. That fast was Yom Kippur. And that was a Wednesday night. Thursday night rolls around. I get a call from this guy Andrew, who was on the team, who was helping me. He's like, "Yo, I talked to some people. I just don't want to be humoring you. I feel really guilty." And he's just like, "You're not gonna be able to make it on the team. No one's ever not played football made it on the team." I said, "Listen, man, don't worry. I have faith in God. I've been going to the head coach's radio shows, yada yada yada." He's like, "Okay." On Monday, I'm starting for my econ test, and I get a text from the associate athletic director saying, "Hey, Sam, can you come down to the facility?" And like at this time, I had no idea what it was going to be. It was like, am I going to be on the team? Or are they going to like look up my history, find out I didn't play football before, and they're going to give me like a t-shirt? You know, I tried out for the team, but I didn't play in high school. But I got all I got was this lousy t-shirt. And I, so an hour later, I couldn't even study for my test. I tried, but like an hour later, I get added into a group chat, and it's like, "Hey Sam, we are the admin team for Texas A&M football. Welcome to the team. Like let's get you onboarded. Can you come down to the facility today?" And I mean, you know, I think that feeling was really the first time that I had felt like it's one of those things you really feel like you can do anything after. Like you feel the miracles of God. You feel God's with you. The things that you said would happen, that everybody looked at you for being nuts about, they happen. And so there I was. And I remember laying in, I screamed, I jumped up. My teammate, my roommate thought someone broke into our house. And, I went, I put on a suit. I went to synagogue first and foremost to thank the Almighty. Then I went and changed back into shorts and went to the facility. And, they began to measure me for everything and do all the medical stuff that was needed to get me onboarded. And that's how I made it on a Texas A&M's team. And that was the easy part of the journey. Right,
You've
the
got an
difficult part laid
inspiring
ahead.
story, a pretty unorthodox story. See what I did
Yeah,
there?
right.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. By the way, in all of my speeches, I say the way I got there. Maybe the only Orthodox Jew has done it, but maybe is the way I got there was extremely unorthodox.
Yeah, that's a good punchline.
exactly. Yeah, I'm wondering during this process, there's not many Jewish NFL football players other than like Julian Edelman off the top of my head. Did you have any people you looked up to on and off the field during your whole career?
Yeah, so I'll tell you. Off the field, were there many? Not really. I mean, Darren Sproles was really someone in the beginning, just because the height similarity. Deontay Harris, I found out about later because again the height similarity, but he played wide receiver as opposed to. I got switched from running back to wide receiver, so Deontay Harris was someone I looked up to more in the wide receiver realm, and I think like those were really like the main ones. I mean, Boston Scott was on the Eagles, but he was 200 pounds. I was 145 back then. So he was like a real power back at 145. I'm sorry, at 210 or whatever he was just insane. So that was like the main ones that I really looked up to. Um, but off the field, and I think my role models off the field are probably the most important ones. One person I would say that I really looked up to in terms of like the concept of accomplishment and purpose was like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I would say because I think he was someone more than I've ever seen was a visionary in understanding sometimes the correct path for someone or many times, and actually many times the correct path for someone isn't really exactly being a cookie cutter, right? It's to utilize the skills that God gave you and the environment that I was raised in. I grew up around Chabad. I was very close to Chabad, so the environment that I grew up in really, reinforced that concept of being an emissary of God wherever you are and using everything that God gave you for good. And for me, obviously the best way that I can serve God at this point in my life is with my physicality, with my body, and with my persistence, right? And when I get on the stage with my ability to speak and inspire. So that was something that really made me look at myself and say, there is more to life than just working and I don't want to call it the rat race, but just doing the basic
Yeah.
type of thing. There is a lot more to life that you're supposed to accomplish. And I would say that I definitely looking back that my upbringing around him and stories about him was certainly something that still to this day does shape my perspective.
Yeah, and then Sam, so obviously, like we talked about earlier, you played in front of the Texas A&M football stadium. You walked on the team. When did you realize like you can start using your platform to not only express your faith, but also guide people in the right direction? I
Mm.
played college baseball for a year at Swanee a few years ago, and I was following what you were doing. It inspired me to be, more passionate about being Jewish, bringing that to my teammates at a Christian university and doing things like that. So
Mhm.
when did you realize that your experience allowed you to, make a bigger impact on the people around you?
Um, it was one of those things where like I actually knew from the beginning. Like when I first decided, I was like, okay, listen, I want to play football, but there's got to be a greater reason for why I want to play football. Right? It can't just be you want to do it for the sake of doing it. And I was reminded many times, right? Because football is not an easy sport, it's not an easy game physically, it's not an easy game mentally. Like it's not an easy game, and it's but there are great lessons that you learn through it. But it's just not easy, right? It's like the question is, so why subject yourself to that? And it came up to me. I was like, it has to be, a point of purpose. And I knew, like, God doesn't give you these desires, these, because everything can be used for good or for bad. But like, God doesn't give you this deep-seated desire to do something that you've never done before, unless there's a good reason and there's a good thing that you can have. And even before I made the team, when I even told my mother that I was going to go out on this venture, I told her, I said, you know what? There are so many people that I can inspire if I become the first Orthodox Jew to play Division I football because nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever, no one's ever been Shomer, Shabbat observant or kosher observant, fully Shabbat and fully kosher observant and done this. And I was like, imagine what that would do for the mind of the Jewish kid if I could. And that was like, not forget about just the mind of the Jewish kid. Every kid, who was told that they were too small or too this or too that, and every kid needs that encouragement to live life to the fullest and use their talents to the fullest. And that was really what 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 I understood, from like about a month after I started, like around a month, 3 weeks after I started training, was like there has to be a higher purpose. And I knew that, and I took this notebook with me. And in this notebook, and I only wrote this down later, but I had this vision in my mind as I was training that I was going to speak to, especially Jewish kids, but like to everybody and inspire them. That I was going to speak to them and inspire them. And I took this notebook and I wrote down like these promises. And one of the things that I wrote down was that I would use my social media platform, whatever platform I get, to inspire people. And so like I knew it from beforehand. And then, when I made it onto the team, I very much curated my first post. I didn't, I waited about a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months after I made it onto the team. I waited till I had like really like done something in practice because I didn't feel like I knew the attention that it was going to garner, and I didn't feel like it would be fair to my teammates for a kid who's never played football to make it onto the team and not do anything in practice and then get all this attention. I just didn't feel right doing that. So I waited till the end of the season until I started getting some reps in practice and some more reps in practice. And then obviously we played LSU. We upset them when they were number 5. And then I even told my friend to bring a camera to that game for whatever reason. Then everybody rushed the field, so she came down and she took the first picture ever of me in my jersey, in my full uniform. And that was when it first started going around. And then I did the famous to fill in photo. And when we'd had our media day, and I knew that would blow up. I knew that would be a good campaign to get people to start wanting to fill in, right? And then about a year later, or 8 months, no, 6 months later, I put out Day in the Life of an Orthodox Jew playing Division I football. And that, kind of blew up. And then I did the next video about me eating kosher and how I prepare for game and this, then the other. And right, that catapulted into the social media platform that I have today. And that was kind of like in the beginning when Instagram Reels was starting. So it really, like, it was something that I knew I was going to have to do from the beginning. But I did, to a degree, kind of curate when and what I put out.
Yeah. I want to talk about how during your whole path of trying to play professional football, you've also built yourself a platform. You have a big following on social media. You've kind of had the business side of it in mind with the ultimate goal of playing professionally. Can you talk about how you've kind of built your platform and tried to do that outside of football?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I understand where I lie as a creator, and I think I lie in a very unique nexus between two worlds. Between, obviously for the Jewish kids who see me, and then for the non-Jewish kids who just, who see me as a football player who wears a yarmulke. And, I understand that my positioning is very unique, and I have an ability to interact with and teach people things that maybe they might not have learned generally. So, I structured my content like this. I try to make as much as I can about my life as a football player. Right now, I'm starting to do these live streams with my training to get, show people more into the insight of that. I made videos showing what it was like to mix Judaism and football, how I kept kosher as an athlete, how I kept Shabbat, do all of that. And then, some videos I make also to motivate, just general motivation, talking maybe about my story, some of my speeches and that. And then finally, there are videos where I'm just teaching about Judaism because I do realize I'm in this unique space. And there's plenty of Jewish kids, I mean, who don't know about football right now. Or I'm sorry, who don't know about Judaism. And, using my platform as an athlete, I think that I'm in a very unique place where I can, speak to them. And not just them, though, the other, the non-Jewish kids of the world as well, who, they don't know about Judaism. They don't know what we believe. Most people don't know what we believe. You know what I mean? It's only a very small amount of Jews that even know what we believe. And even a smaller amount of those Jews actually know. Right? Like there's like an amount of the Jewish world who doesn't know anything about Judaism or knows at the very surface. And there's like there is even in the Orthodox world, like plenty of people do stuff, but have a very basic knowledge of where it comes from. And then a very small amount actually knows like the full laws and everything that we do. And so my goal is to take that and take those and those perspectives and understanding and answer people's big questions in a way that everybody can understand. And truthfully, I learned something in the process as well.
And I was gonna say, basically, like what you were just talking about. Obviously, in a time where religion is kind of going away, that we've seen it, that you have followed God and you've used God to get to where you today, or you basically guided you to it. So, like, how important was having that religious faith and having God to rely on and believe in to get you to where you're at today?
It's a very, very, very good question. I would say that there is nothing in my life that has been more important towards towards getting me to where I am today than my faith in God. My entire life, it has been this type of thing. I mean, I did not have a traditional upbringing. I did nothing in, there were plenty of things where I needed that higher authority. Everyone talks about love of God, and that's very, very important. I think that's one of probably the most important thing that you would have. But also the understanding is like, God may love me, but there are things that God doesn't want me to do. So really, I shouldn't be doing those things out of love for God. Sometimes you need the fear, though, as well. The fear of being, but not of punishment, the fear from being away from God through doing those things. And having that understanding that God is always watching over me, that God is in my mind, God knows what I'm thinking, but also that God knows what's best has really kept me on the straight path, in life. And that's something I really believe serves such a great, like people in this world have no idea how important it is to have the thought that somebody is watching your actions over you. If everybody believed that God was above them, we would live in a beautiful society because people would not lie, people would not cheat. Well, if everyone believed and acted like it, I'm sorry, there are plenty of people who believe that everybody acts like it, but like if everybody, we'd have a beautiful society. So and on top of that thing, sports is inherently religious. It's always been religious. You cannot take religion out of sports. In fact, the irony is that when the Olympics started in Greece, right, and there are two separate Olympics, right? The modern Olympics and the ancient Olympics are not the same thing. But the Olympics, when they started in Greece, it was a religious festival. Now they were pagan, right? They were polytheists. They were serving and doing things that were completely different than people are doing now, with monotheism, believing in one God. But sports always inherently is religious. And it has such a unique ability to connect you to God on a higher level because in sports, you have to understand one thing, and it's that God's blessing is what gets you to where you are. It's not always the most talented person who makes it, but it's the most connected. And I don't necessarily mean just connected to people. It's connected to God. It's connected to to the coach of all coaches, right? To the general manager of all general managers is that connection. And every time I got off the field, and this is the thing that I really want to push home, especially for the Jewish community who maybe hasn't prioritized sports in our lives. Every time I got off the field and I burned off the steam and I did the work and I did what I was doing to get to where I wanted to be and where I believe, God had set for me, I felt more connected to God than ever. When I went and prayed in synagogue, I felt more connected to God than ever. It's so central at the fiber of my being and who I am that the moments that the moments that I felt the silence for me were like completely, because sometimes God is testing and it's silent. The teacher doesn't talk during the test. But the moment, like those for me, were insane. I didn't know what to do because my connection to God for me is everything. And that's what's got me to where I am. There's so many things you can control. You can control how you eat and how you train and hopefully how you sleep, whatever you do. But there's one thing that you can never control, and that is being in the right place in the right time. God positions every piece together like it's a board of chess. And hopefully the right people think the right things about you. And that's, again, also something that's up to God. And that's something that everybody has to remember.
Yeah. So I love your talk about how God's driven you throughout your entire life. I want to talk about a segment that we've been doing with all of our guests. Just take us through your favorite moment that you've had playing football. It could be on or off the field or even on the sidelines, a funny moment, just your favorite moment that comes to your mind.
Really, really good question. You know, I think for me, I actually go back to this one, and it's not. There's two actually. They're somewhat interrelated, but not that much. There's two. So I got switched over to playing wide receiver in my first spring ball, and I had to go up on one of my first reps to run a slant, and I had literally no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had come in, I had barely played running back. Now they're switching me to wide receiver, and he told me to run a slant. I'd been watching a little bit, but I didn't know much. And I killed the linebacker on the slant. I mean, like a ton of separation. I remember when I broke off in separation, I heard Jimbo and the other coach like, "Yeah, Sam!" I heard them screaming it, and man, that did so much for me. You know, just as a point of encouragement. There's so many times that Jimbo encouraged me as a coach, and I don't even know if he himself would view them as major, but they were huge for me. And I caught the ball and I won. And then my coach, we're sitting in meetings and he's like, "Dude, I'm gonna play that play in film because you killed that guy on the slant." And we get into the film room and he says, he makes me stand up and he plays the film over and over, and he made every receiver in the room clap for me. And I felt like at the freaking top of the world. Because remember, I had not played any football in my life. I didn't even know how to run. Realistic. Like I've been training, I've been sprinting, but I didn't know the form. I didn't know anything. Right. So I was, thank God I had the basic athleticism and have the basic athleticism. Like I was on top of the world. And the second moment was we were in spring ball. We had player-led. We were in summer ball the next year, and we had player-led practices. And we were under a new head coach, and we're doing player-led practices. And I'm talking with my teammates, and I told him I never really scored like a touchdown before. Even in practice, I had some that might have been, but they were in 7-on-7. So we're running a 2-point drill, and he tells Miles, who's a quarterback at UNC now, he's like, throw the ball to Sam. And I get in there and I get past the first level defender. I make it up to the second level. Right? It was the second. Yeah. I mean, it's condensed at that point because it feels a lot smaller when you're going from 10 yards out to the end zone. So I make it past the first level defender and I make it to the second. And my assignment was to cut in on a dig. And I remember in real time, I saw the defender change his leverage to cover the dig. And so I turned back out the other way and he threw me the ball and it was a touchdown. And when we finished practice, the entire team, they picked me up and they carried me off the field and everybody started chanting like Rudy. And, there's no video of that, unfortunately, but that was also such a highlight for me at that time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and Sam, we know we took a lot of your time. We really appreciate you getting on this podcast, man, and we wish you the best in the transfer portal and keep doing what you're doing. You motivate everyone and all of us. So
thank you, boy. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all.